From the moment The Untamed first aired, no one could have predicted how deeply Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan's connection would imprint itself on audiences around the world. At the time, it was easy to say the chemistry was simply good casting, strong writing, and two talented actors doing their jobs exceptionally well. But years later, long after the drama ended, long after their careers moved in different directions, the bond fans feel between them has not faded. If anything, it has grown quieter, deeper, and more enduring. That alone is what makes this story impossible to ignore. Because most on-screen pairings burn bright and disappear just as quickly, trends change, new faces rise, new stories take over the spotlight. Yet somehow, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan remain an exception. Not because they are constantly seen together, but because they are not. Their absence from each other's public lives is precisely what keeps the connection alive. When The Untamed was filming, both actors were at very different places in their careers. Xiao Zhan was still fighting for stability, navigating uncertainty, pressure, and the fear that success could disappear just as quickly as it arrived. Wang Yibo, younger but already disciplined, carried himself with a quiet intensity that set him apart. On set, they were not loud, they were not performative, they were focused, and that focus created something rare. Staff members from the production have, over time, described an atmosphere of mutual respect. They weren't inseparable, but when scenes required emotional depth, something shifted. Their attention narrowed, their energy aligned. Scenes that should have been difficult flowed with an ease that surprised even experienced directors. That ease translated to the screen. Viewers didn't just watch a story unfold. They felt it. They believed it. And belief is not something you can force through acting alone. It comes from trust, from timing, from two people listening to each other without trying to control the moment. As the series gained global popularity, pressure followed. Expectations multiplied. Every interaction was analyzed. Every look was paused, replayed, dissected. And somewhere in that chaos, something changed. Not between them, but around them. Suddenly, silence became necessary. As careers exploded and public scrutiny intensified, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan did what many don't have the strength to do. They stepped back. Not dramatically, not publicly. They simply stopped feeding the noise. No shared appearances. No nostalgic callbacks. No statements designed to reassure fans or spark speculation. Just distance. To some, that distance looked like an ending. But to others, it looked like protection. Because what people often forget is that not all bonds are meant to be displayed. Some exist quietly, away from cameras, untouched by expectation. And sometimes, choosing silence is the most honest option available. Years passed. Both actors grew into their careers in different ways. Wang Yibo built a reputation for discipline, versatility, and control. Xiao Zhan became known for emotional depth, resilience, and sincerity. They didn't mirror each other's paths, but they carried something shared. A history that couldn't be rewritten. Fans noticed small things. Moments that weren't meant to connect, but did anyway. Similar phrasing in interviews. Matching emotional tones when discussing growth and pressure. A shared emphasis on boundaries, privacy, and staying grounded despite fame. No one ever confirmed anything. No one needed to. Because what lingered wasn't a rumor. It was a feeling. The feeling that whatever they shared during that intense period of their lives left a mark. Not a dramatic one. Not a romantic one necessarily. But a formative one. The kind that shapes how you work, how you protect yourself, how you move forward. Industry insiders have often said that working through extreme success together creates a unique bond. When two people experience sudden global attention side by side, they understand each other in ways others can't. That understanding doesn't disappear just because time passes. It matures. That may be why fans say the bond refuses to fade. Not because they expect a reunion. Not because they want confirmation. But because the connection feels complete as it is. Untouched, unexploited, and used for publicity. In a world where everything is monetized, that restraint stands out. Every so often, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan trend together again. Not because of something new, but because people remember. A clip resurfaces. A line goes viral. A behind-the-scenes moment appears on someone's timeline, and suddenly years collapse into seconds. The reaction is always the same. This still hits. That reaction doesn't come from nostalgia alone. It comes from authenticity, from something that was real enough to last without maintenance. Neither Wang Yibo nor Xiao Zhan has ever tried to rewrite that chapter. They don't deny it. They don't romanticize it. They let it exist exactly as it was. And perhaps that's the most powerful part of the story. Because bonds that refuse to fade aren't kept alive by proximity. They survive because they were built on something solid in the first place. Respect, trust, shared experience. Years later, the world has changed. They have changed, but the quiet truth remains. That quiet truth is what keeps resurfacing again and again, no matter how much time passes. Because when something is truly formative, it doesn't announce itself every year. It doesn't demand revisiting. It simply stays woven into the background of who you become. For Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan, that shared chapter came at a moment when neither of them could have fully understood its impact. They were working long hours, carrying the weight of unfamiliar attention, learning how quickly praise could turn into pressure. In that environment, trust wasn't optional. It was necessary. People often assume bonds are loud when they are strong. But on that set, strength showed up differently. It showed up in restraint, in professionalism, in the ability to rely on another person to hold the emotional line of a scene without pulling focus or demanding control. Directors later spoke about how scenes between them required fewer explanations, not because they were improvising wildly, but because they were aligned. They understood the emotional destination and trusted each other to arrive there together. That kind of alignment doesn't happen often, and when it does, it leaves an imprint. After the drama ended, life moved quickly. Schedules filled, projects stacked up, opportunities expanded, public attention intensified, and with that came the reality that some things needed to remain untouched to survive. Fans noticed how carefully both actors navigated that transition. Wang Yibo became increasingly selective with his words. He spoke less, listened more, and focused on work that demanded discipline and control. Xiao Zhan, facing a different kind of pressure, leaned into sincerity, choosing roles that allowed emotional honesty and personal growth. They weren't mirroring each other, but they were responding to the same lesson, that not everything meaningful needs to be explained. Occasionally, journalists would try to pull that chapter back into the spotlight. Questions framed indirectly. Nostalgia disguised as curiosity. Both actors responded the same way. With calm. With respect. Without reopening doors that didn't need reopening. They never erased the past. They simply didn't perform it. That choice frustrated some fans at first. People wanted reassurance, closure, answers. But over time, many began to understand that the lack of commentary was the answer. Because when something matters enough, you protect it from becoming content. As years went by, new generations of viewers discovered the untamed. They watched without the noise of real-time controversy or expectation. And interestingly, their reactions echoed those of the original audience. They didn't just see chemistry. They felt history. Something in the way Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan shared the screen carried weight beyond the script. A sense of familiarity. A depth that couldn't be manufactured. New viewers, unaware of everything that followed, still picked up on it instinctively. That's when it became clear. This wasn't about fandom memory. It was about emotional truth. Psychologists often say that intense shared experiences create bonds similar to those formed during life-changing events. The bond doesn't require constant contact to remain significant. It simply becomes part of how each person understands connection, pressure, and trust. That framework explains why, even now, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan feel linked in public consciousness without actively participating in that narrative. They don't need to. The work speaks for itself. Every time a clip resurfaces, fans don't talk about what could have been. They talk about what was. The sincerity, the balance, the quiet strength. There's no urgency to reclaim it because it doesn't feel lost. It feels complete. And perhaps that's the rarest thing of all. In an industry built on constant reinvention, they share a chapter that was allowed to end naturally. No exploitation, no reinvention, no rewriting. just acceptance. Years later, their bond refuses to fade not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't. Because it existed in a moment when both were becoming who they are now. Because it was shaped under pressure and survived without display. Because it taught them something about boundaries, respect, and the cost of visibility. And because audiences, even without understanding why, can sense when something real once existed. That's why it lingers, not as a rumor, not as a promise, but as proof that some connections leave marks deep enough that time can't erase them.